All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
There are people who pass through your life for a season, and there are those who stay through the years, standing beside you through sunshine and shadows, helping you carry your hopes and your fears. Les was a man who lived for others, never asking what he could gain, giving his heart to family and strangers, bringing hope where there once was pain. A friend like Les comes once in a lifetime, so kind. He gave his strength to those who need it, leaving footprints time won't leave behind. Though heaven has called him to higher places, his spirit remains with all he knew. Like Les comes once in a lifetime, and the world is better because of you. A proud police officer serving his city, standing for justice, honor, and right. Then with the Shrine Club, helping children, bringing comfort and guiding light. Countless hours and countless miles, quietly working behind the scenes, changing lives with a helping hand, living the meaning of dreams. A friend like Les comes once in a so kind. He gave strength to those who need it, leaving footprints time won't leave behind. Though heaven has called him to higher places, his spirit remains with all he knew. A friend like Les comes once in a lifetime, and the world is better because of you. To Pat and the girls, your husband and father, leaves a legacy shining bright. In every smile he helped create, and every child who found the light, and those of us who called him brother, though tears may fall and hearts may ache, we'll carry forward all he taught us, with every step and choice we make. A friend like Les comes once in a lifetime, a heart so true, a soul so kind. He showed us once in a lifetime, and his memory will never die. Rest easy, Les, your work is finished. Your journey here has reached its end. But in our hearts, you'll live forever. A noble man, a cherished friend.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, here in St. Catharines. That's 1220 on the AM dial. And they stream us at classic1220.ca. I came in with a song that I did for a very special friend of mine. His name is Les Badrogi. And Les passed away over the weekend. And I'd like to share with you something that I wrote to Les's family, his wife Pat, his two daughters, Leslie and Andrea, and to the members of the Mississauga Shrine Club, where Les was the noble or president. Today, with a heavy heart, I share the passing of a dear friend, Les Badrogi, who left us on Saturday, June 20th, 2026. Les was far more than a friend. He was a man of honor, integrity, compassion, and unwavering dedication to others. A former Toronto police officer and President Noble of Mississauga Shrine Club, Les devoted countless hours of his life to helping those in need, especially children whose lives were made better through his tireless fundraising efforts and charitable work. For more than 3 decades, I had the privilege of calling Les my friend. During that time, he became not only a trusted companion, but also a positive influence on my life and the lives of my family. His loyalty, dependability, empathy, generosity, and support were qualities defined the very essence of who he was. If you were fortunate enough to know Les Badrogi, you know a man who would always be there when needed, never asking for recognition, only seeking to help others. I was so blessed to know this wonderful family. Devoted wife Pat and 2 daughters, Andrea and Leslie. The love, pride, and dedication he had for his family were evident in everything he did. Exonation words cannot fully express the loss that so many of us feel today. Les touched countless lives through his service, friendship, kindness, and example. He made this world a better place simply by being in it. Though he may no longer walk among us, the legacy of compassion, generosity, and service that leaves behind will continue to inspire all who knew him. Les, I know you can hear me. So thank you for your friendship, your guidance, your laughter, and your example. You will be deeply missed, Les, fondly remembered, and forever appreciated. My thoughts, love, and prayers are with Pat, Andrea, Leslie, and their families, and the entire Badrogi family during this difficult time. Rest in peace, my friend. A special tribute to a special friend. Exonation, my guest this hour is Bobby Ansari, and Bobby, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you, Rob. Happy to be here.
Bobby, can you tell our audience about your journey into energy healing and earth energy research?
Sure. So I have a background in spiritual wellness, and also because I grew up in a largely Muslim background, that Muslim household. But my family's originally from India. And so a lot of the friends of the family were Hindu and Buddhist, and, growing up here in Quebec, going to Catholic school. So I was kind of exposed to a lot of different spiritual traditions from a very young age.
Sure.
And one of my most pivotal experiences was that I actually spent 3 years living in and working in Turkey. And Turkey was kind of a spiritual awakening for me. I met my first spiritual teacher there. She was a German woman who was a student of the German mystic Rudolf Steiner. And she had a hotel in Cappadocia in central Turkey, which is where you have these underground cities.
Hmm.
It's a place where a lot of the early church fathers started, Christianity. A lot of the saints come out of there. And so Cappadocia is also a very weird and wonderful place. If you look at the landscapes, it's all fairy chimneys, underground cities, big valleys. And it was the perfect place to actually be trained in learning to read the energy of landscapes, because this is a really, really high frequency place, which hasn't been diluted yet, if you will. Like, let's
Hmm.
say other sacred sites have become because of tourism, like let's say the Giza Plateau or Machu Picchu, for example, because these are just giant tourist traps now. And so I learned through Sabine, my German, spiritual guide, basically how to learn how to read the energy of landscapes in Cappadocia. That was ground zero for me. And so that was really started my journey in learning how to read the energy of landscapes. And then later on, I started using dowsing and to find ley lines and
Hmm.
so forth. And yeah, and that's how it all started for me, really.
How did the creation of Rose of Jericho Wellness come about?
So I basically work with spiritual wellness. So after Turkey, I was contacted from an old professor of mine at McGill University about a program in spiritual caregiving at Johns Hopkins. And normally, you need a master's of divinity to get into that program, and I did not have that. I had a bachelor's of commerce
Hmm.
in international business, but I had all this exposure and understanding of other spiritual traditions.
Bobby, I hate to do this to you, but I ran a little bit over time. My producer is telling me I have to take my break, so please stand by.
Sure.
Exonation, our guest this hour is Bobby Ansari, and her websites are roseofjerichowellness.com and earthenergyreader.wordpress.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM. That's 1220 on the AM dial. And they stream us around the world into 170 countries at classic1220.ca. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Was pain. A friend like this comes once in a lifetime. A heart so true, so kind. He gave his strength to those who need it, leaving footprints time won't leave behind. Though heaven has called him.
Somewhere out there, a light's gone dim. A chair sits empty, the world feels thin. A mother's voice that should be near is now just silence filled with fear. The days grow longer, the nights grow cold. Questions unanswered, prayers unfold. A family waits through endless pain, hoping to hold her once again. If you know something, if you see the truth,
And welcome back, everyone. Don't forget, Exo Nation, if you have any idea where Nancy Guthrie may be, apparently law enforcement is still investigating a couple of notes. One that claims she passed away shortly after her abduction. We don't know if it's legitimate or not, but the law enforcement is taking it very seriously. So if you have any information whatsoever, if you have any ideas, do the right thing. Pick up the phone and call 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI. And in Canada, you can call up your local detachment of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Ontario Provincial Police, or your local law enforcement agency and share the information that you have with them, and they will certainly make sure that your information gets to the right place. Bobby Ansari is our special guest, and her websites are roseofjerichowellness.com and earthenergyreader.wordpress.com. Bobby, I'm sorry I had to interrupt you in your talk, so let me see. Last I heard that you were going to take a course that should have been only for people who graduated theology, but you
That's
had...
right.
Yeah, okay, so please take us through it.
No problem. So basically, after that, because of my background and understanding of other religions, I was accepted into the program, and it was a program at Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C., level 5 trauma unit. In fact, the hospital that this program was at was the same hospital that received the 9/11 victims from the Pentagon.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was a level 5 trauma unit, and this is a place where you're being present and you're basically counseling people spiritually. They used to call it pastoral care or
Yeah.
chaplaincy, but now to be more inclusive of other faith traditions, they call it spiritual caregiving. And so that was my baptism of fire. And this is a kind of environment where you don't really can talk about love and light. It's life and death every day, because this is horrific, levels of trauma that you're dealing with. And so that's where I got my training in spiritual caregiving and spiritual counseling and spiritual psychotherapy. And so I've also become certified with the National Wellness Institute as a certified wellness professional. And my specialty is spiritual wellness. And when we talk about wellness, we understand physical wellness and emotional wellness, but there are 6 dimensions and one of those 6 dimensions is spiritual wellness, which not a lot of people seem to understand. And this is the area that I've decided to focus on and to teach people about.
Why do you think that the spiritual wellness is not talked about more? Because it is very important.
I think it's because a lot of people, and this has been my experience, people seem to mix up religion with spirituality. And so when we talk about wellness, especially like in business contexts, like, HR professionals
Sure.
and so forth, a lot of companies are because they mix up religion with spirituality, they get very nervous, because of the separation of church and state, like you can't bring religion into the workplace and so forth. So I think that's one of the reasons why so many companies are kind of hesitant about spiritual wellness, because of that interpretation of mixing the two of them up. And so my job is kind of very clear, is that I'm trying to diffuse the situation and try to teach people that no, spirituality and religion are two very, very different things. And that spirituality is a dimension that it's just one of the most basic human dimensions that all human beings have. And so when I look at the 6 dimensions of wellness, I kind of look at them as the basic 6 dimensions of being human in many ways.
And what are the 6 dimensions of being human?
Well, you've got physical wellness, you've got, emotional wellness, you've got social wellness. So, having community around you. You've got spiritual wellness. You've also got a societal wellness and cultural wellness.
So how do earth energies influence our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being then?
A lot of this research with earth energies some of it is ancient and some of it is being rediscovered. In terms of the ancient stuff, I think a lot of the ancient cultures kind of understood, where they placed their churches, where they placed their temples. And with recent research with ley lines, we're finding out that a lot of these sacred sites, pilgrimage routes are actually placed on ley lines. And a lot of the people, like, when you go to a spiritual site, when you go on a pilgrimage route, people seem to feel a lot more cleaner energy, for lack of a better word, and it inspires them. And I think a lot of that has to do with the purity of the lines and the power of these places. And also because, for thousands of years, in some cases, people have been going there, praying there, leaving their best wishes there. And I think that really has an effect on people.
What are some of the signs, Bobby, that a person may be living or working in a location with negative earth energies?
Negative earth energies usually cause a lot of distress. There's people out there like geomancers, for example, who are able to actually read some of these earth energy lines and ley lines. But a lot of the symptoms include things like confusion, depression, anxiety. Like if there's a lot of, also, like, even sometimes past energies, like if this is a site perhaps where tragedy has taken place, for example. People talk about going to places like, the concentration camps in Eastern Europe and feeling real oppressive energy when they've gone there. So clearly, the landscape has a tendency to sort of absorb and record the energies of what's taken place there. It's almost like it has the emotional memory and the emotional impact of what's happened in these places.
Bobby, have you encountered situations where correcting earth energies dramatically changed someone's life?
Yes, I have, actually.
Can you share it with us?
Sure. I think a lot of people, when they realize it or not, when they go on pilgrimages, they're encountering earth energies and they're connecting to something very, very ancient. And I actually had an instance of a patient of mine in Washington D.C. who had come in, and she was 32 years old, and she had throat and thyroid cancer.
Oh, gosh.
And she was very young. And one of the first questions we ask people in spiritual caregiving is, what's your story? And we listen to a person's story very, very carefully. And based on what they tell us, we're able to extract what's going on with them on a spiritual level. And so this woman had come from a background of extreme emotional and psychological, trauma and abuse, not physical, thank God. But in order to survive that childhood, she very wisely understood that she had to stop using her voice. And I don't mean that she stopped talking, I mean she stopped showing up for herself. And that was a wonderful tactic in order to survive that kind of an abusive childhood. But unfortunately, she had carried it over into adulthood. And that meant one relationship after another with men who were as equally as emotionally abusive as her parents were. So she never used her voice. I mean, that she never spoke up for herself. So for me, there was absolutely no mystery as to why the cancer manifested in the throat and thyroid part of her body. So I get to hearing her story a little bit more. It turns out she's Irish American, third generation, had never been to Ireland. That's where her family's from Western Ireland. And one of the things that when a patient leaves the hospital is we don't have very much to do with them after that. But before she left, I told her, like, listen, you've got some time, you've got some money. Why don't you take a trip for yourself, a wellness trip for yourself? No boyfriend, no friends, no family, just for yourself. And maybe even go back to Western Ireland where your people are from and see what happens. There's a lot of holy wells. There's a lot of holy sites from pre-Christian pagan times. Each of these holy wells has a particular energy or a saint associated with it or a healing quality. And unbeknownst to me, she took my advice. She flew out to Dublin. She rented a car from the airport and she went on a 2-week driving holiday through Western and Northern Ireland. She visited a number of these holy sites, holy wells. And I think she must have connected to something very, very deep and very profound there, because after she came back to the United States, the cancer went into remission and she decided to change her life. She got rid of this stupid boyfriend. She quit her job and she moved out to Los Angeles, and she's now working as a script supervisor in one of the studios. So she found her voice again.
Thanks to you.
I facilitated it. That's all I can say.
All right. Well, I'll give you credit anyway because I think that's wonderful. And it seems that there are a lot of cases out there, Bobby, where there's a lot of mental abuse and physical abuse that a lot of women, even in today's society, are suffering. So how do we get them to get the help that they need?
I think a lot of the times I saw a lot of domestic abuse
Mm-hmm.
examples in the hospital, and the statistic a lot of women and a lot of these organizations that deal with domestic abuse talk about is that usually a woman doesn't leave until after the seventh time.
Wow.
Let's say in a physically abusive relationship. And so I think a lot of it has to do with attachment patterns.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women, unfortunately, we've been brought up
Would that be like the Stockholm syndrome?
No, no, not necessarily.
All right,
Stockholm
hold on.
syndrome,
You and I have got to take a break, and I'm sorry
no problem.
that I kind of thought that it sounded like the Stockholm syndrome. Please explain it to me when we come back from this break.
No
Bobby
problem.
Ansari is our guest this hour, Exonation. Rose of Jericho Wellness.com and earthenergyreader.wordpress.com are the two websites. Don't forget, if you have any information pertaining to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, call 1-800-FBI or your local law enforcement agency. I'm Rob McConnell. This is The X Zone. Don't go away.
Questions unanswered, prayers unfold. A family waits through endless pain, hoping to hold her once again. If you know something, if you see the truth, you can be the reason she comes home soon. Do the right thing, pick up the phone. No one deserves to be.
They say Mandela died in prison back in 1983. Yet history books keep telling us he lived to set men free. How could millions all remember a world that never was? That single strange collective memory started all the buzz. Now people talk of timelines, worlds colliding in the night, tiny cracks in human memory or dimensions out of sight. From children's books to movie lines and logos rearranged, something in the fabric feels familiar yet has changed. We're shifting through the cracks tonight, searching for what's real, trying to understand the things our memories still feel. Are we living parallel lives in worlds just out of phase? Or is the human mind rewriting yesterday's old day?
Bobby Ansari is my special guest this hour, Exonation, www.roseofjerichowellness.com and earthenergyreader.wordpress.com. So Bobby, what we're talking about is nothing like or something like, but not exactly the Stockholm Syndrome when we're talking about spousal abuse.
So a lot of spousal abuse has overlaps with Stockholm syndrome, but it also has something to do with attachment to it.
Oh,
So syndrome is much more specific. It refers to a situation where someone bonds with a person or a group that has power over them,
okay.
especially in a threatening or a captive, abusive or coercive situation. So the inner script for a person who might be in a syndrome situation may be they hurt me, but they also protect me, and therefore I need to stay connected in order to survive.
Gotcha.
And the main difference with Stockholm syndrome is the attachment patterns. So when we talk about attachment patterns, there's four different types. There's secure attachment, which is the healthiest pattern. A person can maybe internally say that I can love you, I can depend on you, and I can still remain myself. So it's very safe. An anxious attachment pattern is when it comes from inconsistency. Sometimes love was available, sometimes it was withdrawn, and the inner script in that situation may be I need to keep you close or I may be abandoned. And then there's the avoidant attachment pattern, which is basically the runner. It often develops when emotional needs were dismissed or shamed or ignored. And the inner script in that case for somebody with that attachment pattern is I'm safer when I don't need anyone. And then there's the fourth one, which is disorganized attachment. And that usually develops when a person you needed for safety was also a source of fear or chaos or humiliation or abuse. And in that case, the inner script could be I want closeness, but closeness also feels dangerous to me. So those are the four attachment patterns, and Stockholm syndrome kind of overlaps a little bit of that. Yeah.
I was thinking during the break that when you were talking about this lady who took your advice and hopped on an airplane and went over to Ireland and visited a lot of the sacred sites, that it seems that our ancestors had the answers that we are so desperately seeking today. And my question is, why do you think that we broke away from knowing all these, for a lack of better words, tribal rituals that were in the past that, once again, like I said, we're so desperately wanting to connect with again in the present?
I think successive waves of colonization, for example, and not just when I say colonization, I don't just mean Europeans coming over, to North America or to Australia, but also the impositions of different religions. That's a form of colonization as well. Because if you go to Europe, you had a pagan tradition that was very rich, which was basically almost eradicated in many cases with the introduction of Christianity. If you go into Africa, a lot of their tribal, ceremonies and beliefs were also eradicated with when slavery came in, and a lot of the population was, basically taken over to the new world. And when you go back before, let's say, empires, before the rise of big, cultural institutions like religions, when people were much more tribal, all over the world, people were much more closer to the land as well. They weren't as distracted, let's say, by telephones and cell phones and television. They lived in much more closer harmony to the land. And there's a strong belief in a lot of shamanistic traditions and Native American traditions that the closer you are to the land, the better you're able to read it. And so a lot of their ceremonies come from that closeness and understanding of the land and the environment and the animals and so forth, and all, as well as the plant life, learning to read weather patterns. You know, I spent a couple of years with First Nations tribes and doing many, many sweat lodges. And one of the persons who's involved in the sweat lodge ritual is the fire keeper. And this person has to know how to read the fire. Now, when you go into Gnostic traditions, let's say in places like Bulgaria or southern France, they had, mystics who were able to read the clouds, and basically knowing what the clouds were telling them, they could tell you what the energy level was over, the town that the clouds were over. Like if this was a place that was going to be recently undergoing war, they could read it. So, there was also an Austrian mystic, Victor Schaumburger, who was able to read water, for example. The Nazis pretty much eradicated his writings, but he's coming back into fashion again now. So I think it's a lot of these cultures who live in close proximity to the land, who were able to read these things, who were able to plot ley lines, were able to find out what areas of the world had some very energetic and powerful spots for healing, and waters that were healing, earths that were healing, rocks that were healing. They figured it all out, and I think industrialization had something to do with it, obviously. That kind of divorced us from the land, placed us into cities, and put barriers like concrete between us and the earth. And, when you go down to the Hopi Reservation, for example, in Arizona, they don't, and especially in the second Mesa, they don't have electricity. They don't have running water in some of their homes. And they wanted to keep it that way because they feel that that kind of electricity is an interference between them and the spiritual world.
So, why do so many ancient cultures describe similar mystical experiences despite being separated by geography and time?
Well, Jung would probably tell you it's the collective unconscious, and Joseph Campbell would probably tell you the same thing. Because I think there is a collective unconscious, which is we're all human. We
Mhm.
all experience, the similar milestones, birth, growing up, old age, death, illness, happiness, love, sadness, anger. And how we express it is maybe very, very different, but the fundamentals are still there. And so, Joseph Campbell used to use, let's say, mythology, for example, to show how very, very diametrically different myths from different parts of the world were basically saying the same thing with their myths, with the same symbology and so forth. So I think it's just a human thing. I think, once upon a time, at the end of the day, we're all part of the same tribe.
Right.
We have differences, but the experiences are all there. It's just underneath the surface, really.
Why, in your opinion, are so many people today drawn towards spirituality, consciousness studies, near death experiences, the UFO phenomenon, and alternative understandings of reality?
I don't think religion did it for them in
Hmm.
many cases, especially, you know, um, systemic and institutionalized religion. I think also this also explains why there's a resurgence in interest, especially in shamanistic cultures and in Native American teachings, especially in places like Central Asia, like in the Stan countries and in the former Soviet republics like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Those places, the shamanistic culture has come back with full force,
Hmm.
and because I think it speaks to something which religion does not speak
And
to us
what's
about.
that?
I think it really touches on this deep yearning for touching the sacred, and that the sacred is not something that you need a go between, like a priesthood or a
Hmm.
clergy to decipher it for you, that you can experience the sacred yourself.
But when you look at modern day religious philosophies, to me, they're just a method of controlling the masses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. A lot of it's patriarchal,
Yeah.
very masculine oriented, keeping women down. I mean, I think it's just insane that, like, a woman cannot become a priest if she wants to within the Christian church, for example, or within the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church. I think the religion just, and the proof is in the pudding. People are leaving religion in droves.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in your part of the country, but in Montreal, where I am, churches are completely abandoned.
Same
Um,
here.
they're being sold off as condos,
Yeah.
and they're being refurbished as condominiums. And some of them are beautiful, but nobody's going to churches anymore. A lot of them are being decommissioned.
I was, I had a guest on several years ago, and he said, Rob, let's face it, the Vatican is the richest corporation on the planet. The Pope is the chairman CEO. The cardinals are the board of directors. And then you've got the people who put the tithing in the plates. They're the shareholders. And you've got all this property that is being owned, and all this art, all this gold, all this wonderment. And yet you have so many people who are going without food, going
Mhm.
without clothing, going without homes. I'm sure that the deities look down on this planet and say, oh my God, did you guys ever screw this up?
I agree. I agree. I also think that there's a lot of parts of religion that
Hmm.
don't speak to the human experience anymore. I'm talking about institutionalized religion, of course.
All right, let's talk about that when we come back from this final break. Exonation, Bobby Ansari is our special guest. www.roseofjerichowellness.com and earthenergyreader.wordpress.com. And Bobby and I will be back as we wrap up this first hour in tonight's show of the X Zone Radio Show with yours truly, Rob McConnell. And we're coming to you on the CanCom Broadcast Network from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And our anchor station, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM. That's 1220 on the AM dial, as we used to say in the olden days. And they also stream us on classic1220.ca. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Started all the buzz. Now people talk of timelines, worlds colliding in the night, tiny cracks in human memory or dimensions out of sight. From children's books to movie lines and logos rearranged, something in the fabric feels familiar yet has changed. We're shifting through the cracks tonight, searching for out past Neptune, where the sunlight dies. A frozen secret rides the ancient skies. Mathematics whispers, telescopes stare, searching for a giant in the darkness out there. They watch the small worlds drift and bend, tracing silent paths where the known planets end. Is it gravity's ghost or a world unseen? A hidden king in the cosmic dream. Planet X, are you calling from the night?
Bobby Ansari is our special guest. First of all, Bobby, thank you ever so much for coming on the show tonight. It's a great pleasure talking to you. And I must tell you, as a young lad growing up in Chambly, Quebec, one of the biggest thrills that we would have during the summertime was going to the Grand Bisou, a beautiful part of the Eastern Townships, from where you're from. So, bienvenue, mon cher ami de Quebec.
Merci beaucoup.
So we were talking about the institutionalization of religions, I believe, before we went to the break. So please continue, because there's so much out there that we need to know that, we just scratched the surface. So please tell us more.
No problem. So I think with the institutionalization of religion, a lot of teachings were hidden or suppressed.
Yeah.
Especially I think religion, especially aspects related to female spirituality, for example. And so I think because of that, there's a lot of, let's say, women who are just turned off
Yeah.
by masculine oriented religions in general. And so they're breaking away,
Yeah.
and they're looking for their own path in spirituality. And maybe that might mean a shamanistic tradition speaks to them much more. Maybe that might mean, something a little bit new agey. Maybe that might mean experimenting with plant medicines, for example, and consciousness in that way. And religion doesn't touch that at all, and I think also because there have been so much breakthroughs in the last 10 to 15 years, especially in the therapeutic world and in therapeutic circles, understanding things like narcissistic abuse, surviving narcissistic abuse, surviving things like the adverse childhood experience test and how that affects health. And a lot of that kind of stuff was really suppressed by religion. Things like, having to obey your husband when maybe your husband is not such a good guy to begin
Exactly.
with, right?
Exactly. Like it's crazy. I for one could never understand why women were suppressed and why some women are still held under the thumb. When you look at religion, the only place that a woman was seen fit to fit in was to become a member of a convent or become a nun. And the women that were portrayed in the Bible, besides the Virgin Mary, let's take an example for, let me see, who shall we use for an example? What was the name of that young lady that Jesus hung around?
Oh, Mary Magdalene.
Right. And she kind of, to me, was meant to be the breaking out of where women were supposed to be recognized into religion along with the Virgin Mary. But for some reason, women kept being suppressed. I think it's a crime. I think it's a shame. I, for one, when you look at history, when women ran a country, it was better off. They didn't have the ego like men have. No, and I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, you were probably saying, well, what the hell is he talking about? I don't have an ego problem. You want to bet? With that
Well,
attitude.
I think when you look at religion and you're citing Christianity, but I mean when you look at the major Abrahamic
Yeah,
religions,
I was just using
yeah,
Christianity as an example.
but there's also like two sides of, let's say, the Abrahamic religions. You have the exoteric and the esoteric versions. So like in Christianity, the exoteric is, what we know as Catholicism, Protestantism, and so forth. But the esoteric version of Christianity is Gnosticism. In Islam, you have, your garden variety Islam, and then you have the esoteric version, which is Sufism. In Judaism, you have, your different types of Judaism, the exoteric version, and then like the esoteric version is Kabbalah. When you get into the esoteric version, if we're going to run with Christianity, for example, with
Sure.
Gnosticism, the Gnostics were basically eradicated. They were killed off by the Catholic Church because they believed in the equality of men and women.
Yeah.
Their teachings were completely suppressed. And they did a pretty good job of suppressing Gnostic teachings until the Dead Sea Scrolls suddenly showed up, or the Nag Hammadi, scrolls showed up. And that's when suddenly all these gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and other apostles, which are not included in the traditional Bible, but were somehow giving you teachings that were completely different from what's in the Bible already.
But when you look back then, Bobby, where was common sense? It's not Father Earth, it's Mother Earth.
Right.
And it's the women who bring life into the world. So where did this mightier than thou attitude come from in man?
Well, I think if you go into far back into history, let's say into places like Malta, where you have the world's oldest mother goddess temples there from 12,000 BC, there are matrilineal cultures. And then for some reason, maybe it was the Ice Age, maybe it was the ending of the Ice Age, somehow they were almost eradicated and it became a very patriarchal culture.
Well, I'm glad we are where we are today. We still have a long way to go. But the change is starting. The change is good. I believe in equality. And we just have to keep on getting there until there is less and less spousal abuse. There's no excuse for it. And
No, of course not.
I, for one, when I was in the police force, I saw a lot of it. And to be honest with you, it made me sick. But you had to carry yourself as a professional and do what you were supposed to do. I remember being called to a house with my partner. We get to the front door, and the lady says, "My God, he's got a gun." And we go into the house, And there's the husband laying in bed, in a hide bed. And, of course, we took the necessary precautions when approaching him. And he was lying there with a fully loaded rifle. You know, and the examples can go on and on and on and on. And this is something that law enforcement officers see on a daily basis. And we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we know it's not an oncoming train because we can see the changes that are being done. We can see with the work that's being done with, mental help that's being available, the call centers that are being available, the drop-in centers that are becoming available, that this is slowly changing. Now, on the other side of the coin, there are men who get abused. It's just not a one-way street. Mm-hmm. And what we need to do is we need to make this information more available to the masses. And I think, Bobby, that this is where you come in and this is where you're making a big difference.
I think I look at myself as a facilitator, but I think also, on a spiritual level, there's a change that's happening there's a shift that's happening within the culture. So when because I do consider myself, I do follow a lot of Gnostic teachings in my own, in my own spirituality. And one of the things that I think was really pivotal for me was understanding that in Gnosticism, there's an aeon named Sophia, Mother Sophia, who was basically eradicated in the normal Catholic Protestant church. But in the Gnostic church, the Holy Spirit is actually female, it's feminine, and it's Sophia, divine wisdom. And when you get to Istanbul, like for example, the Hagia Sophia, that was the cathedral dedicated to Sophia and to divine wisdom. And I think Sophia's been suppressed for a very, very long time, but I think she's coming back and with a vengeance right now. And I think you can see this in the culture, in the wider culture as well.
We've had guests on the show over the years that have done the show who were witches, who were members of different covens, who were members, who were pagans. And one of the latest guests we have had on was a wizard and a grand master of a pagan group. And he was saying, Rob, you can't believe how many people are coming into paganism because the established religious philosophies just aren't cutting it anymore.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
We've got about 2 minutes left. What I'd like you to do is, what is your final message for the X-Zone Nation tonight? What would you like to leave with them?
I would like to say that I think have hope. First of all, I know that we're going through some very, very dark times in this world right now.
Yeah.
But it's never permanent. It's there to have hope. There's a lot of things happening in the world right now, in the spiritual world, cosmically, that I think there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs coming up soon. And there's going to be a lot of truth flooding consciousness very, very soon. And just to hang in there. It's coming. It can be slow sometimes, but I think we're living in extraordinary times. And I think the next 2 years in particular are going to be very, very pivotal, not just for women, but I think for the entire species, quite frankly.
Well, that is good news, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I thought maybe I missed something there. Bobby, I want to thank you ever so much for coming on the show tonight. It's always a pleasure talking to somebody else from Montreal. Many have good time spent in the McGill ghetto at the Yellow Door, 7 Steps, Boiler Room. Know the area well, so thank you for coming on the show. Take care of yourself. Continued success. And I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X-Zone.
Thank you, Rob. I look forward to it as well.
Bonsoir, mon cher ami.
Bonsoir.
And that's it for this hour, X-Zone Nation. I'll be back on the other side of this news break as we continue, investigating the world of the paranormal, the science of parapsychology, and things that go bump in the night. The X Zone is a place where people dare to believe, dare to be heard. Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, streaming us at classic1220.ca.